welcome to City Fireworks. So for this particular session, you're going to need some colours. My original one, I've used pinks and purples. So to get this particular colour effect, I've used a pink, kind of magenta tone with some white. You could also use a something like an Elysium crimson or a rose pink, and then I've added also got out a bit of ultramarine blue to create my purple. You can use purple straight out of a tube, or you could do this with our sunset in a different colour. So in this particular session I'm actually going to demonstrate that, and if you're going to go with the same colourway as I'm doing now, I'm going to use yellows and oranges and reds to create my sunset. So first thing to do is get out your two bright colours and also some black. So that could be your pink, so pink and white and a bit of ultramarine, or pink and purple if you've got it, if you want to stay with that, or if you want to do the same as I'm doing in this one, I'm going to get out some pink and some orange. I'm yellow and orange. I'm just using a standard primary yellow, and I've got a bit of vermilion as well, so that's quite a deep orangey colour. I'm going to grab myself a small portion of white, and then a generous helping of black. I'll hold my palette up for you to see in a second just how much of each I've got out. So there we go. You can see I've got my primary yellow, I've got some orange, any orangey tone or red will do, a little spot of white and some black. And then I'm going to use, I've got a 3/4 inch, this is actually a filbert, but any kind of big flat type brush will work well. And we're going to start off with our palest colour, add a little bit of water. So if you're going with your pink, add a bit of pink and white. If you've got yellow, just take a small amount of your white and mix in with it. That will just help it to be a little bit more flat and a little bit more opaque. Get it into your nice kind of smooth consistency. And then just for this one like starting point, we're going to paint basically, we are going to kind of even this up and make sure it is perfectly horizontal in a bit, but we're going to go right the way across, about 1/3 of the way up from the bottom of your canvas. Get a good coverage of paint on there. Then grab a little bit more and come down and put in a couple of little strokes like that. We do need to move a little bit quickly for this first section because we don't want the paint to dry off too much. So I'm going to then, I'm going to go a little bit faster, and then I'll wait for you guys to catch up. I'm then going to get a bit of my orange and just add a small amount to my yellow and just start to kind of warm my colour up. So if you're going pink to purple, you take a little bit of your purple tone and you just add that. So I would say streaky is good. You don't want kind of like solid bands between each layer so that you form stripes, but you don't worry if it's a little bit streaky, because that really helps to look like clouds and things like that. And then I'm also going to take a little bit of my orangey tone down into my water. So we're basically going to take the tones that we use up here and we're going to repeat them down below. So don't go too dark too quickly. So maybe add a little bit more pink to your purple. and lighten it up a little bit. And then I'm going to take a bit more of my orange into my yellow. You want to really add a small amount at any time. So if you're going with your purples and pinks, you add a little bit more of your purple. If you've got ultramarine and you're kind of blending it, you want to go a tiny, tiny spot at a time. So you can see I'm leaving the brush marks in. And then whichever colour, so if you had your ultramarine with a tiny spot of your pink in, you can then kind of, so it's almost to its pure colour, you just want to take the edge off of it before you start to go dark. So you can see I've got a sort of orangey, reddy sunset now. And I'm just going to brush again a little bit more through into my water. And then I'm going to start to transition up into a bit of black. So I'm not going to wash my brush out. I'm just going to touch the tip into some of my black and start to work that through. So with your pinks and purples, you'll get you'll kind of get this lovely transition between the purple and the black. If you're going with more of the reds and oranges, you'll get this kind of almost sludgy kind of colour. To start off with, only work with a very small amount of your black because it will just swamp your colour that's underneath. And I can also just turn my brush on its side a little bit and put in some kind of almost like streaks of cloud a bit lower down. So you definitely don't want a sharp sort of change between your purple or your orange and your black. And then take a good amount of black and just fill in above that point. So probably the best solution for this is actually get the top area filled in and then kind of fill in down to and go over that area that we've just painted with the mixture of the colour and the black, so that you don't get a sharp edge, and also you won't have masses on your brush to kind of come down and lose the graduation. I'm then going to pick up some of my black and I'm going to just fill in the areas in my water that haven't got any paint on. This is not by any stretch of the imagination something to be too precious about, because we are going to come back and do a bit more with our colours before the end, but we're just getting some of the, particularly with these yellows and oranges, they're not going to want to sit over the top of our black, they'll become all sludgy. So by having some areas that have a little bit of this background colour showing through, you'll get a nice vibrancy that you won't get without putting hundreds of layers of colour on. So I'm just leaving small sections of that, and then when it's dried I'm going to come back over and brush a bit more colour on. Oh, that's looking really good so far. We're going to, don't worry too much about the horizon line at the moment, because we are going to get that all kind of looking smart in a bit. So I saw an advert today. There's an artist, his name's Simon Semple, I think it is. And he has a company called Culture Hustle that make paint, and they make acrylic paints. And he's got a new one out, which is called The Whitest White. And it's like the brightest, most opaque white that you can get. And it's like you only need one coat. And he does all these colours, like the blackest black, which is, you know, like so matte black that it absorbs all light and there's no reflection on it at all. And like the pinkest pink and things like that. He does like the pure, like real pure Tiffany blue and things. So, but it's so expensive for like a tiny bottle of paint, but I might have to treat myself to some of that and see if it really is that good. Perfect. Lovely. Excellent job. Fantastic. So you remember my little trick with the two brushes to get a good horizon line, where you kind of line one up and then dot across. So I know that the bottom of your pictures are still a bit wet at the moment, so I'm going to kind of hover mine over the top. So I've got a small brush and any size of second brush. I'm going to work out where I want my horizon to be. And then all I do is, so I want it to line up with the bottom of the black part of this brush. So I'm just going to move across my painting like this, leaving dots or little marks pretty much where the same point is all the way along. And then when I line up these dots here, that will give me a nice horizontal line. We won't see masses of that by the end of the painting, but we've got it there for us so we know what we're doing. okay? So once we've got our horizon line, I'm going to switch over to, this is a number 10 flat square brush, but a 1/2 inch flat or any kind of smallish flat square brush will do. And we're going to start to put in our skyscrapers. So I'm going to add a little bit of water just to get the consistency a little bit smoother to our black paint. And then what I'm going to do is, rather than kind of working from left to right, just adding in different heights of buildings and skyscrapers, I'm actually going to put a few ones in and then fill in between them. What I want to do, so with my first one, the tricky bit here is getting these looking perfectly vertical. So maybe your first one there. And the other thing is, don't overload your paint too much. If you've got masses and masses of paint on your brush, you'll struggle to get nice sharp corners. So I've got one in there. I'm going to do the same trick as I did to get my horizon line. And so I'm going to put a few buildings in. So start off down here, get myself a little mark in, move my brush up. So I'm giving myself a starting and a stopping point, and then I can join those in, join those up, and that gives me a nice vertical painting, like building, and I don't have to worry about ones starting to lean and things like that. And then what I can do is just fill in the ones in between. And I haven't started to kind of get this kind of issue where they're starting to progressively lean more and more the further I go over, which is always something, particularly sitting over to one side when you're painting like this, is always a bit of a danger. So the more kind of details you put into your buildings, the more realistic they will look. So don't just put in kind of like lots of vertical skyscrapers, put different heights and different widths and put little areas in between them, things like that. So you can put in little kind of areas of interest so that they look like older buildings. You can put little domes on the roofs so they look like churches or concert halls and things like that. You can also have a look, if you want this to be a specific kind of skyline, you can do that. So if you wanted to, you could kind of, you can do buildings like, if you were doing London, you could put in the Gherkin and St Paul's Cathedral. So you could do New York and things like that. So there we go. I've got a couple of kind of sloping buildings. You still would have little bits on the top. I've got to about halfway now, and I'm just going to do again another one where I do the start and the stop, and just so that I know that if I have started to make these ones lean, that I can correct this before it gets too far. So you can leave areas where there's no nothing in between the buildings. I would put little kind of things like trees, just dab a little bit of a tree line or something like that there. You can have some lower buildings as well. And then I'm just going to carry on going across. And what you can do is now, once you've done that, is go and just any gaps between the edge of your water and your horizon line that you painted in, you can black those in now. If you find that your paint's starting to get a bit on the thick side and not wanting to go too solid, just add a little bit of water to your brush, go back to your paint and you can add a bit more and get those sharp edges again. Again, I'm just kind of creating some trees and stuff around a little bit of a building there. And there we go. It's not the end of the world if your buildings aren't sitting perfectly kind of flat and matte, if your sort of background is still a little bit wet and you've maybe picked up a bit of colour, because those will just work as looking like lights, either the sunset reflecting off of your buildings or a bit of, you know, some lights that are on and things like that. Oh, those are good. Excellent buildings. Once you've done your buildings, there's no rush to finish, just carry on. We're going to go back down to our water. Now, if this isn't perfectly dry by now, it's not the end of the world, because we want to get a bit of streakiness into this, and we're going to use the colours that we've used in our sky. So start off with the yellow or the pink. Just use a small amount on your brush, and we're just going to brush over where we've kind of left some of the paint. As you can see, I've still got a lot of the black is showing through, which is why we left those areas kind of with some sort of the colour showing. And you can come up a bit. So we're giving ourselves sort of different areas. I'm going with like long, streaky, using my brush sideways on. And if you have got some of your black that's still a bit wet and you pick it up, just grab yourself a tissue like I've just done. Give your brush a wipe out. Don't try and sort of smear it around, because you'll just make everything super sludgy, and you don't really want that. And basically we just want to start losing kind of some of the edges. You're not going to lose them totally, but we're starting to soften them, and then we are going to come back with our black and kind of soften them again in the other direction. So don't go too thick with the paint, because it's always much better to kind of go lighter and do more layers than blob on layers and masses of great big thick kind of paints. So I'm going to do a couple bits with a bit of white added as well. Don't do too many of those. We're going to come back and put some white highlights on in a few places. So there we go. We've started to kind of started our first kind of areas of the reflections going on. She need a bit of rescuing. Oh, okay. Have you guys by any chance got an old toothbrush? Oh, just showing off, that is. Because I couldn't remember whether I actually put it on the kit list or not. So I know I did. So
it stays in there.
Okay. So, and fan brushes?
Yes.
Have you got
Fan brushes. Only one.
Fan brushes are not essential, but they do make it a little bit easier. Yep, perfect. So first thing we're going to do, so we're going to put some stars in our sky, and the most realistic way of doing that is using a old toothbrush and some white paint. If you don't want to do that, because it is messy, I get it, just use a really tiny little detail brush. So let me find a good one. So just something like this. This is a 10/0, and it's kind of nice, small, round brush. And you just literally, I can show you, you just dot, you just go over, just dotting some stars in. So the hard bit with that is actually getting it looking random. What I would always say is, even if you do use a toothbrush and do this, I would always also get a small brush and actually put a few kind of brighter ones in. To get good stars, it's about the consistency of your paint. So dip your half of your toothbrush into your paint water, and then, so I'll show you what I'm going to do here. So dip just half of it in, not the whole thing. Grab some of your white paint, take it to a different kind of area on your palette, and work the two together through the whole brush, and that will give you roughly a good consistency that you want. And then if you want to use your thumb or another brush, and you want to pull towards you, and that will splatter away from you. The thing to keep in mind when you're doing this is don't hold it directly over your painting, because the paint is runny and it will drip off if you're unlucky onto your painting. So I'm just going to splatter a little bit. You'll get a really fine kind of spray. You can come down and do a bit over the whole of your buildings, because it will look like it's kind of like from the fireworks as well. And then what I would do, so that gives you like a first very fine coat. I then go back and get a second amount of paint and do it again with a slightly thicker coat, and you'll get kind of slightly thicker dots. If you go too thick, you end up with just lumps. So yeah, so you can see I've got kind of splatters there that time rather than dots. And all I do, go with one of my tiny little detail brushes, and the splatters don't matter, because those will look like they're kind of parts of our fireworks, the kind of twinkly bits coming down. I'll just go around and pick out a few sort of little stars, brighter ones and things like that. So are you guys going to go see some fireworks?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Are you going somewhere near you?
Not 100% sure yet. It depends if Elaine is well enough.
Sorry?
Depends if Elaine is well enough.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But there's a display on near us on a Saturday. There's also a few on Friday night. So very occasionally we will have our own display in our garden, but it doesn't always turn out that well.
Oh, I love the sticks that use fireworks.
The sparklers.
Yay, sparkling.
Well, shall I tell you something?
Yeah.
Guess when's my birthday?
What?
Friday.
Oh, happy birthday.
So think of me when you're watching your fireworks.
Tennis.
Can't ask that.
How's it going?
Can I show you your certificate?
Yeah.
Let's have a look.
I think I've got a bit too much stars.
You can never have too many stars. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. That is going to look so good when you put your fireworks on. I wouldn't go too mad with the fireworks. I think you've got such a lot of sparkles going on with your star that you don't need loads of fireworks. So with this original one, I used the same colours as I've used in my sky. I just added a bit more white to it, and I've got, so something to keep in mind, a little bit of art theory, is cooler things look further away, warmer things look closer. So if you're going to go with any sort of bluey tone or lilac-y tone ones, I would make those smaller, put those on first, and then come and put on your pinks or your whites or anything like that. I'm going to actually switch mine up and change mine over to being pinks and whites rather than going with my sky colour, just so that I've got a bit of a change really. And what you want is some white, whatever colours you are. You're going to use your fan brush, and I'm saying I'm going to use my pink. Oh, I've dropped it on the floor. So I've got a bit of my pink. I think I might go pinks and reds on mine. And so ideally with this particular one, actually the cheaper fan brushes are actually do this better than the slightly more expensive ones that have more bristles. So if you've got a cheaper one that's a little bit kind of a bit more scrawny, that actually does this job really well. Just wet your brush a little, shake any excess off, and then so whatever colours you're going with, add a bit of white to it, because it will, being on the black background, it will darken down. And I'm going to load up my brush, and then I'm going to dab it onto my palette. And you see I've broken up the bristles. Let's bring that really close. I've broken up the bristles a bit, and that will help to get this sort of textured line that we've got. And then what you want to do, so this breaks down into, I'll show you the first one and then you guys can kind of do as many as you like. So the first one that you want to do, I'll do it here. So we're going to start off, we're going to go dabbing our brush into the shape of a seagull, like that. And then from that seagull, so we've got these that curved V of a seagull, and we're then going to turn it into a spider. So we're going to put legs onto it, like this. You can see what I mean about needing to add white to lighten it up a bit. And then once our spider has got some legs, we just fill in the gaps in between. And you don't want big, thick, solid like lines of paint. You want there to be lots of broken gaps between them. And that's my first firework on. So quite thick paint, as in you want a bit of water added, but not masses. You go into that kind of, you want to scrape a lot of the paint off because you want a nice broken line. And then you basically, you dab, I'll do another pink one up here. So we're going to dab into our curved V of a seagull. And then from that, we are going to basically paint in a spider, all our spider legs, all curving downwards, apart from the ones at the bottom, and those will go straight down because it's gravity that's pulling those. And then we just keep filling in as we go the gaps in between. You don't have to join every single one up, so you can have some that are kind of coming out between the gaps in our legs. If you're really adventurous, you can kind of load half of your brush up with a paler version and half of it with a darker version, and you get some really nice effects. So you get some dark and some light all mixed in together. How's that going? How are you finding it? Yeah, good. Awesome. And then that's it. Just put in as many as you like, but just kind of tweak the colours up, lay some of them over the top of each other. So I'm going to try a kind of corally, pinky, orangey one next. So I haven't got a lot of room, so I'm going to put this one up here. So again, I'm just going to repeat my putting in a seagull and then giving my spider legs like this, and then just basically working around that. You might find, I always find my fan brushes when you've done this for a bit start to kind of curve, and what I do is I kind of twiddle the brush round so that it's curving in the direction that the firework would be curving. So there's my kind of corally one. Oh, those look great. So I think you could try kind of doing a few with a very small amount of paint, some that are coming off from the main firework as well. Yeah. So once they start to dry, you'll find that your paint start to disappear into the background a little bit. And what I would do is just either with a slightly lighter version or just the same one again, just go over the center and just lift it a little bit. So you can do it with white. I've done that with some of these, but kind of on reflection, I think it's a little bit harsh. But to do some lighter ones, I think slightly lighter in those same tone works really well. So I'm going to do some more sort of yellowy, much paler ones now, and I'm going to do a low one over here and then one big central one, I think. So, but whatever you do, it's always the same kind of formula. We've always got those spider legs. Coming off from that central point. Like that. And then I'm going to go for one really big one in the middle. So I think I'm going to actually give my brush a bit of a clean and get a bit of fresh white paint and use a really kind of bright white for this. So This would also work with just using white for the fireworks. If you wanted to kind of sort of make it more, there we go, let's do some that's just pure white. So I have switched over to that other bigger brush because I do want this one to be a little bit bigger. So, and I'm going to take some of these right out quite far. So, and then, so there are just, actually, I'll just do one more here. So what you can also do is basically where you get ones that have exploded and are now starting to kind of spread out more. So that would have nothing in the middle and just some normally sort of slightly fainter sparkles coming down, and they would go like that. So personally, I don't like those ones as much as our big ones, but it's just something you can add in if you want to. So keep doing your fireworks if you're still doing them. If you have finished, before you clean out your fan brush, I'm just going to get a very small amount of white paint on it. You can see how separated my bristles are. And where we put our horizon line in before, what I'm going to do is just follow it, dabbing my brush along. And you can see I'm creating lights along what will be the end, like the edge of our water. They're kind of like, not street lights, but you often get the kind of chain bulb lights along the edges of rivers, or kind of where you get cities on the edges of coasts and things like that. Once I've done that, I'm going to scrape. Oh, beautiful. That looks fantastic. I am going to scrape off most of my white, and then with my fan brush, I'm just going to go along. Just most of this we will lose, but I'm going to just take, very lightly rub this fan brush. Just take some vertical lines down. So we've got a little bit of reflection on our water of our lights that are along our coastline or shoreline or riverbank, whichever this particular one is. So did you need me to recap that? Or are you okay? You okay?
I think Sophia needs a bit of a recap, please.
Sorry, I can't hear.
Could Sophia have the recap, please?
Yes, of course. So very small amount of the white paint left on my fan brush. So you really don't want lots. You want your bristles to be all separated like this. And then what you do is where we had our horizon line earlier on, it might have disappeared if you need to put another one in, but if you can remember roughly where it was, and then you just dot your fan brush along. And because your your bristles are all separated, you'll get these kind of repeating pattern of dots, which look like the kind of strings of lights you get along shorelines. And then again, without adding any more paint, you're just going to come down below those lights, very slightest, most subtle little reflections, just dragging your brush downwards off of those lights. We are going to go over a lot of those, so you will lose it, but it's a really subtle kind of dry brushing. Okay. I'm then going to, after I've done that, reload my brush up with the white, and particularly below where we've put any, say, white fireworks, we're just going to, in some clusters, just add a few little reflections in on the water. So don't cover the whole thing in it, do it in little clusters. We're going to do this with some other colours as well, so this will show up mostly in kind of like the darker areas. I'm going to give my brush a wash out and give it a dry as well. Are you guys okay? Yeah. I'm then going to do the same as I've just done with the white, but with black. So first thing I'm going to do is use thick black paint, and I'm going to basically, so where we've put all of our reflections coming off of the lights, we're going to come along, dab some black over those. Then we can go through and dab some little bits into some of our colours. So that's just kind of starting to break it up a little bit. And then I'm going to wet my brush and get my paint a little bit more fluid. And then keeping with my fan brush and keeping it horizontal, I'm going to just brush, flick backwards and forwards over some of my areas of colour. So we've got the kind of dark reflections in the water, as well as these kind of really light, liney strokes as well. So I'm just pressing really lightly, not putting much pressure on, just flicking backwards and forwards. And we start to get these lines in the water. So you can do particularly the kind of the speckled bits with the thicker paint. You can do that with your colours that you've used in your fireworks. So I get myself a clean brush. So using your fan brush still, make sure it's nice and dry, and then just, again, like with the black and with the white, don't put in masses of colours all over. So maybe maybe just pick out one colour like your pink, and then just dot in a bit of pink in the reflection below. Where that colour is. This is one of those paintings that looks like it looks good close up, but you can see all of the kind of detail. But when you look at it from a distance, it takes on a whole other life. Once you've done that, the last bit that needs to be done is basically just some lights in our buildings. And again, I'm going to use my really tiny little detail brush. What I like to do with this is, which I'm not sure if it actually shows up on this painting, I've used two shades. So I've got a pure white that I've used, and also a slightly off-white. I kind of just ever so slightly greyed it down. You could also use a yellow, because some buildings do have a slightly more yellow tinted light to it. And all I'm going to do then is go across my buildings, dotting in lights here and there. So we're kind of making this so it looks like, you know, the buildings are mainly dark and empty. These are more sort of offices than. So what I like to do is do some that are, as you can see, we have a kind of some areas that are regular, and, you know, like you could dot right up one side of a building and that would be, you know, like stairs or something like that going up. And then throughout the rest of the building, just putting them randomly, put a few here and there, put a few different shaped lights in. I'm going to do them, these ones are pure white, and then I'm going to come back with a sort of more of a yellowy toned ones, slightly sort of duller. So you don't have to put masses and masses of them, and they don't have to be huge. They can just literally be a few dots. You can put some kind of like bigger squares and stuff down at the bottom. They look like shop windows and things like that. It's just a case of really mixing these all up. That's the best way to do it. So got a bit of a tower here. So if you feel confident, you can put some lines through some of the buildings as well. I would also, while you've got your pure white on there, maybe go through and add some sparkles and some more stars and things like that if you want. So I'm trying to mix it up a little bit with the some different shapes of our windows. And then I'm going to just go through, so I want to add in, particularly on the bottom, a few little sparkles around. If you've already put in a very kind of sparkly, starry night, then you don't need to add loads of these around, but you can also add a few into the center. Like that. And then, I'm going to go back. I've got a kind of yellowy tone. I mean, you can put in street lamps and all sorts if you want. So, but it does look really good if you put in a few that are a slightly different colour. And there we have it. So, as always, love to see how you've got on. If you would like to share the recording on the Facebook group, and I'm going to turn this video off. So the Facebook group is Easy Does It Artists Hangout, and would love to see how you got on. And hopefully I'll see you very soon for another session. So let's stop there.